Greetings, y'all. Hope everybody's doing well. It has been a warm one out here today. You can probably tell I'm sweating like a dog. Went through Delwater Gap and passed over the Delaware River. Wasn't exactly where George Washington crossed or how he crossed, but by doing so, I crossed over into New Jersey from Pennsylvania.
I'm finished with this guy.
Not long after, I hit the 1,300 mile mark. And of course, 1,308. Problem is, I was engrossed in a book. It was an audio book, but a book just the same. And I went blowing right by the 1,300 mark. Didn't realize it till I was a half mile past. So I had to turn around, which I didn't want to add a mile to that day, but I really didn't have a choice. When I think of New Jersey, I think of The Sopranos and Joe Pesci, Newark, Snooki. But there are parts of New Jersey that are beautiful, very beautiful. It's been very dry, not a lot of rain, pretty warm, and that's dried up many of the water sources, which has been a problem. But there's been some trail angels along the way who have been kind enough to leave water at certain road crossings, and let me tell you, it's very much appreciated. One interesting site in New Jersey was what's referred to as High Point. High Point is the highest point in New Jersey. And when I got to this viewing stand, it's about 100 yards, maybe 200 yards away, there was a fellow from Jersey there taking pictures. And I asked him what it was, and he told me it was High Point. I said, really, what is the high point in New Jersey? He goes, I don't know, but I think it's about 8,000 feet. I had to tell him, no, nothing on the Appalachian Trail is 8,000 feet. After finishing up New Jersey, of course, there came New York. The crossing at New York was a little less fanfare. Just somebody had painted on some rocks that I was at the New Jersey, New York state line.
I'm finished with this guy.
But 100 yards up the way, there was a American flag. Spent about 70 or so miles in Jersey. So it wasn't long after crossing over into New York that I hit 1,400 and 1,408. The southern part of New York has turned out to be quite rocky in its own way. Most of the rock requires rock climbing. It's very vertical and straight up. There was one section that I thought was very cool. It's called the Lemon Squeezer. As you can see, I don't think it's 24 inches across. Had to take my pack off, squeeze through, then lift up my pack, make my way. Spent the night next to a shelter that overlooks the Hudson and Stony Brook in the foreground, and I had hoped and I had read that you could see the skyline of Manhattan, but unfortunately it was kind of foggy, kind of hazy. There wasn't much to see, but maybe just some lights in the distance. Woke up early this morning and it was even more overcast. I was hoping to get a sunrise, but that didn't work out either. Next stop, Hudson River. Crossing the Hudson River. Off to my left, West Point, home to the U.S. Military Academy. Also, just north here is Poughkeepsie, where you'll find the Culinary Institute of America. Beautiful Hudson River. As we moved out of the Hudson River Valley, we passed by what used to be known as Fort Arnold, named for Benedict Arnold, but it got changed to Fort Clinton for obvious reasons. Most of the fort's been torn down now, but there is a plaque there to commemorate where it once stood. As we moved further into New York, we passed by the remains of an old inoculation station used by the Continental Army for inoculation against smallpox in 1776. Wasn't much left of it, but they did put up a plaque to commemorate that as well. We passed by two mammoth oak trees along the trail. I just had to stop and take pictures of them. They were huge. I have no idea of their age. I wish I had something more to show the perspective, but in the second photograph you can actually see my trekking poles down at the base of the tree, which gives you an idea of just how big these trees are. They were not as big as the redwoods, but they were massive. Next we passed through a bog or a marshy area on what they referred to as a boardwalk. And yes, we were walking, and yes, it was made out of boards, but it's not what I would describe as a boardwalk, or what I would define as a boardwalk, as you can see from this video. It was very closed in and narrow, and had to stay on the boardwalk. Next, we got into some of the New York farmland that I had been hoping to see. We didn't spend nearly as much time in the farm area of New York as I had hoped. A lot more in the marshy, boggy area of New York, but as you can see from these pictures, it's beautiful countryside. Also, we had been led to believe that there were delis, every 10 to 15 miles along the trail. I was really hoping to dig into some of that cured meat to help put on some of the weight that I've lost on trail. There was 2 or 3, but not nearly enough to satisfy my hunger that's been created here on trail. Next up was Connecticut. Much like the New York-New Jersey border, there wasn't a lot of fanfare other than this sign signifying that I was now in the state of Connecticut.
I'm finished with this guy.
And after 16 days of being on trail, doing 15 to 20 plus miles a day, both my legs and my feet said, time for a break. So I'm in Kent, Connecticut today, taking the day off, resting, taking a 0, be back on trail tomorrow. So until my next video, y'all stay well, and I'll talk to you then. Take care.